that does seem to be a sticking point with some people, but I think the staff's pretty clear on record agreeing that there's nothing magical about the word load that would, again, preclude somebody from proposing and the permitting authority approving a visually based method for quantifying full capture equivalency.
No, I don't believe there is anything, and I don't believe there's anything magical in the word load. If we took load out and did trash reduction, we'd be in the same position as far as I can tell, because it is still a assessment that that you have to develop, that you can defend, and that the regional board can approve. And if you, the state board, determine that that is insufficient, you can take the permit up on your own motion and change it. So I'm not stuck on that word or the words. The reason that we use load is because we talk about the whole process as a load reduction that we're trying to achieve. Trash reduction means the same thing to me as load reduction of trash. But
it's also a term we use through the Clean Water Act, in terms of total maximum daily load. The requirements within those type of programs don't necessarily translate to a mass per volume necessarily. There's part of the analysis. And also the performance standard by which full capture devices are evaluated is often based on either volume reduced or weight or pieces or whatever metric. But load is a general term, and I'm comfortable with it for these reasons.
As am I, though I do have a suggestion, Mr. Wells. The same section that you read from, it might be beneficial to just insert, since people look at these examples and see them as more than just examples, see them as, these are things that they are restricted to just insert in that, the beginning, before you get to the examples of such approaches include, comma, but are not limited to, comma, the following. Is that in the change sheet?
That was actually one of the changes that was made in the change sheet.
The phrase of the week, right? Yeah. Including, but not limited to.
Okay, I'm going to read out the names of the next 10 people. If you can move up to the front, that would be great. Joe Acklade, Angie Manetti, Allison Chan, Jeff Brousseau, Rob Carson, Terry Fashing, Kurt Kruger, Karen Ashby, and Karen Ashby. She's going to have fun. Ba Than. Start with Joe.
Thank you, board members. Joe Ackler on behalf of our client, SPI, the Plastics Industry Trade Association. I came here today on behalf of SPI to convey their support of the draft amendments as we saw them at the end of the year, and still believe those amendments we're very grateful. We also, just as importantly, are grateful for the access that the board members gave to our coalition. You listened to our concerns, and very much so the staff too. So we wanted to point that out. And we're looking forward to today you adopting the amendments that we passed, that came before you today, that were passed at the end of the year. Thank you.
Angie Manetti.
Hi, good afternoon, Madam Chair and board members. My name is Angie Manetti, here on behalf of the California Retailers Association. Before I move forward, we did come here in support of the final proposal of the draft of the amendments, but I did have a question of clarification for the staff report based on the discussion that was taking place prior. In relation to a recommendation for the language to make an amend or an edit for mandatory charges of disposable products to encourage consumers to switch to reusables and mandatory discounts for reusable products. Just was curious to know whether that would be included in the staff report based on the discussion or the amendments that were presented by Seven Generations.
I think I stated earlier that I would not be in support of adding that
Addition.
language.
Okay, thank you.
You would like us to do so?
I appreciate that clarification. Thank you. All right, well then let me proceed. On behalf of the California retailers, we do appreciate the time and consideration from members and staff to address the concerns expressed by several legislators last year over including regulatory source controls and the implementation of single-use product bans for trash compliance. Today I have with me letters of support applauding the efforts that the board has made. Specifically, I have letters from Senator Roth, Senator Galgiani, Assemblymember DeBobne, Assemblymember Calderon, Assemblymember Jim Frazier, and Assemblymember Tom Daly, who would like to just extend their applause and congratulations to the board for the thoughtful, deliberative process that had been taking place in crafting what we call the trash amendments. This final product, we believe, provides the guidance and clarification towards a statewide solution to a significant pollutant in our waterways. More specifically, we support the inclusion of full capture systems in the final amendments, as we believe that these systems are what will yield measurable reductions in, as they did in Los Angeles, in trash in our waterways. Thank you for your leadership on this issue, and we urge the board to adopt these amendments and look forward to being part of the implementation process as we pursue waste reduction goals for the state. Thank you.
Allison Chan. This is the reason sitting up front is very important.
That's because I am not Allison Chan. I'm Jen from NRDC, but I have been asked to give Allison's comments on her behalf, so sorry for taking my time getting up here. Thank you for your consideration of these amendments today. They are long overdue in the state. She also appreciates the acknowledgement of the progress made in the Bay Area. Regarding the guidance questions for monitoring, I want to share our experience from Region 2 regarding monitoring and data reporting. Due to the lack of a clear and consistent monitoring and data reporting requirement, it has been difficult to determine whether permittees in the region are in compliance and whether trash has been reduced by 40% in MS4s as required by the permit. We urge the state board to take the step of specifically defining what an acceptable monitoring program looks like and support regional boards in incorporating these requirements into their permits. Regarding the requirement that Caltrans coordinate operations with Phase 1 and 2 permittees, I also want to highlight the difficulties several Bay Area jurisdictions have had in doing that over the past 4 years. Many of the highest trash generation areas in the Bay Area are entirely or partially under Caltrans jurisdiction, and she would like to urge the board to help facilitate better coordination between Caltrans and local municipalities so that municipalities are not held back in achieving timely and meaningful reductions in trash. Thank you. And Allison is the Clean Bay campaign manager for Save the Bay.
Thank you.
Great. I think in the staff report, early on in the presentation, you mentioned that there's provisions for Caltrans to cooperate with local efforts. Is that right?
Yes, that's right.
Jonathan will get on them if they don't, right?
Caltrans and I are just like this.
Jeff.
Good afternoon, board members. Actually, on the Caltrans connection, I can report that BASMA actually met with Caltrans two days ago on our first kickoff meeting to collaborate together on trash. So we all agreed it was not the first and last meeting, it was just the first meeting. So yeah. Good afternoon. My name is Jeff Barroso. I'm the Executive Director for the California Stormwater Quality Association, or CASQA. I've got a presentation here. I'll try and keep it shorter than I've listed on my card so we can. Okay. Thank you very much, board members, for the opportunity to comment, and for staff for meeting with us as well, and including Jonathan and Johanna, Mariella, and Paul most recently. It's been very helpful. We also appreciate the changes that were made over the weekend, or I guess on Friday, but released on the weekend as well. I've got 3 main comments, but maybe just one also philosophical one about this approach. We see the board looking to this kind of approach of doing statewide policy with a small p on maybe mercury, on pesticides, certainly on trash. And I think we're recognizing that, and this is obviously no surprise, but if we are going to go that way, and of course as a statewide association we like looking at things statewide and consistent that way, but probably incumbent upon that approach is also recognizing that when you go with sort of one size fits all, that you need to be able to tailor the coat, right? So things like flexibility are very important, options that are equivalent to each other. Prioritization is important, so we're happy to see that the amendments as proposed have those things in there. They have prioritization, they have equivalent alternatives that people can pursue, because if you don't have those, obviously, and if you don't have the opportunity to tailor something, then you end up with something that it's worse than one size fits all. It basically doesn't fit anybody, frankly, at the end, so which is kind of tragic. And also to Board Member Moore's point about monitoring, as he mentioned, BASMA actually has a Prop 84 grant to develop. It's a methods development grant for doing monitoring both on land and in the water as well for stormwater, for trash. So we'll see how that pans out. We've got final products will be out in 2016. Let's see. I'm going to be able to skip through some of these slides. The change sheet over the weekend took care of the first 2 bullets. The only one that wasn't taken care of is the density number of 10 units per acre, or as opposed to 15, and we're interested in moving up to 15. This is actually the one thing I heard the most about from across the state, was that the number 10 was very problematic for most agencies. They felt like that was just just wasn't dense enough, essentially. And if you take a look at the photographs from around the state, here's the 10 dwelling units in Marin County, typical suburban street, 10 units per acre in San Mateo. Doesn't look so dense in that context. 14 units in Signal Hill, 15 here in Sacramento, 20 in Sacramento. The staff report talks about a range of 15 to 30. Yeah, 15 to 30. And so what we would propose is that rather than having 10, it should just go up to the low end of the staff report, which is 15. 10 just seems to be very low. It may engender a lot of resources being spent with applications to the state board saying, or to the region board saying, can we bump it up to 15, because 10 is capturing areas that are just not likely to be high trash generating areas. What's my time situation? I'm out. Yeah, I heard that.
And actually, I would like to hear from staff regarding that comment about 15 versus 10.
So just to bring back ancient memory, we started with 2 as our as what we indicated, because it was a change between single-family dwelling and multifamily dwelling, and that was our original that we talked about. 2 to 3 years ago, we went out to stakeholders and said, we don't think 2 is right, we think 10 is right. What do you think? And we got very little response, and so we thought that we'd hit it pretty close. Recently, along with our the amendments, or excuse me, back when we put out for comment, we did start seeing some requests for higher. I'm not wedded to 10 or 15. The issue is that we want to ensure that well, this is a nice clean street, but there's a lot of people in shown in here, and this is 20, so that makes sense. Where you have lots of people, you have a higher generation for trash. We don't have a good number, but except that we use 10 as our number to talk to people about, and didn't really get a lot of negative feedback. And so I think this is really how much do you want to include of these multifamily dwellings, because that's what you're getting when you're going to these higher areas. They're not really single-family dwellings when you're getting up to 15. They're going to multifamily dwellings. That you want to include. We designed this to try and remove suburbia for the most part out of the priority land use, because people that own their own home tend to take care of it.
Yeah, I think it's obviously a sliding scale, and I guess that you can certainly see areas that are 15 that look like they might be higher trash generation. So I think our feeling, what I'm hearing basically is 10 seems like more the exception than the rule, that would be high generation. It's much more typical that 10 would be relatively clean, and that, so.
So in terms of your time, just why don't you go ahead and just go through your slides real fast and
Sure.
list what your other points are.
Good. So we can skip over this one and this one. The next point is about watershed planning, and the basic point here is that a number of agencies are now doing watershed planning efforts and incorporating trash into the prioritization. I'm going to keep going. Yeah, I see it shaking head. And so the request basically is to add language allowing the water boards to approve an implementation schedule that is consistent with the watershed plan, but may be inconsistent with the statewide amendment.
We aren't voting yet.
And let me get to the last one. Regulatory source controls. This is one that's important to us. Earlier this morning or early this afternoon, I guess, you added back in language in the staff report about regulatory source controls. What I'm talking about is adding back the regulatory source controls into the actual amendment itself. It was removed. And I have to say this. It was removed. And regulatory source controls are very important.
I'm sorry, let's clarify. You mean into track 2 with the extended time frame?
Not necessarily with the extended time frame, although that's disappointing. What our proposal basically, and I'll show it to you here in a second, is to add in a simple recognition that regulatory source controls exist as it is now. It's like this tool was taken out of our toolbox, and it's like it doesn't exist anywhere in the world because it isn't even mentioned in the amendments anywhere at this point.
So I think we were talking about that, though, and all due respect. I think that by having ordinances under institutional control definitions, there's a pathway for what you're looking for.
Or one type of regulatory source control, but not the broader definition of regulatory source control. So
And that is confusing. I want to acknowledge that source control has different levels. There's sort of the product level source control, and then there's the source control before it gets to the storm drain system in the municipality.
Right.
And then the latter, we clearly have in institutional controls. The former, I think we're wondering what kind of authority is really there for that kind of thing. And we have, product stewardship council type issues. We got DTSC, our sister agency, looking at green chemistry initiatives and product registration. There's avenues for those discussions that we acknowledge, but we're not clear that there's a nexus here with this particular item.
Yeah, and we're not trying to create a nexus with the water board per se. We're just saying it looks awfully strange for the toolbox to have this thing missing, and what we're suggesting basically is language that would just say, just add it back in there that you recognize that this is a VMP. You're not saying the water board's supportive of it, that you're actually going to do anything about it. It's just, we recognize that it exists as a possibility. I just think about copper and brake pads in SB 346. This was the VMP with a capital THE. If I didn't have this for copper, we'd be still figuring out other ways to deal with copper. So it is going to get used, whether it's mentioned in the statewide amendments or not. It's strange that it wouldn't be mentioned in there, just as a simple recognition. No comments from the water board, obviously, so that's what I'm suggesting. I understand that's the sensitivities and issues here. And then we talked about adding in a definition of regulatory source controls as well into the amendment itself. But again, it's just a simple recognition. Thank you.
Thank you for those simple recommendations. Rob?
Hi, my name is Rob Carson. I'm the senior planner with the Marin County's local stormwater program, and I want to thank you for the opportunity to talk through some of the comments on the trash amendments today. So the fact that trash is discarded or contained improperly is a serious cultural and societal issue. And it's one that affects the environment through a number of pathways. Because the storm drains are one of those pathways, we are committed to trying to minimize and control the trash-related damage to impacts on water quality to the maximum extent practicable. Our concern continues to be the cost of implementation. The true cost of full implementation is likely to be considerably higher than estimates indicate. And the current regulatory requirements from the MS4 Phase 2 permit and ASBS special protections, just as examples, have stretched existing stormwater funding to a limit. So I would just like to urge your board to encourage and facilitate funding of these new requirements and to financially support their effective implementation, and to recognize that without those supports, other things may not be addressed. Preliminary assessments of priority land use areas in unincorporated Marin County demonstrated to me that full trash capture device installations were neither practical nor justified in every single priority land use parcel. And also it was also evident from preliminary mapping of trash generation rates that not all priority land use areas were likely generating high volumes of trash. So for both of these reasons, the county strongly supports Track 2 as a compliance option and recommends that this board adopt the amendments using the language that was distributed in the change sheet on Saturday. The proposed language that facilitates the permittee's determination of the areas within their jurisdiction where full trash capture equivalency will address trash problems where they exist. That will allow the use of limited public funds to be used more effectively and efficiently. So just to follow up a bit on one of Jeff's points about the density. When we were first trying to assess Track 1 versus Track 2, the initial assessments demonstrated to us that it was picking up duplexes, isolated duplexes here and there in some small multi-unit areas where there was no justification to install these devices. So while that's not meaningful for me, because I basically told you we think we're going to do Track 2, for the rest of the communities that are going to do Track 1, it's an important distinction possibly to raise that up to 15 units per acre. So I'm out of time. I thank you for your time. Appreciate it.
I'm sorry. I have a follow-up question. I'm trying to understand what you just said in terms of, help me understand better how changing from 10 to 15, if I understood your comment, would incentivize, would make Track 1 more attractive?
It would in some cases. Probably not for the unincorporated Marin County, but there may be some jurisdictions within the state where making that change makes Track 1 more attractive. I mean, the nature of unincorporated counties are it's all the leftover pieces, right? And so in a lot of ways, what we're going to get is little parcels here and there, and Track 1 makes very little sense in that regard. But there could be, you know, municipalities where their land is contiguous, where making that change to 15 may actually make Track 1 more attractive to them because there's no monitoring requirements and compliance is more straightforward in that regard. But they wouldn't be putting very expensive devices into neighborhoods that don't generate that much trash. Yeah.
Hello, thanks thanks Chair Marcus. There's been so much switching around. Thank you, Chair Marcus and board members, for the opportunity to comment. I'm Terry Fashing and manage the countywide Marin County Stormwater Pollution Prevention Program. I'm speaking today on behalf of Marin's 11 cities and towns and the County of Marin. We're committed to protecting the environment and water quality. We share your board's commitment to keeping trash out of our storm drains and waterways. We support adoption of these trash amendments. We have a few remaining concerns, and we want to express our support for some of the proposed revisions provided in change sheet number 1, distributed on April 4th. I I'm going to just really say ditto to what Rob Carson said about the cost of compliance with the future trash amendments. This is still a big concern for us. I have my pen. I'm ready to get going on some grant applications. So we need grant funding, and we just encourage your board to support providing grant funding to Marin's municipalities and municipalities throughout the state.
Pen, you're doing those paper?
Well, you know, I'm going to actually type it in.
Okay, better.
I just meant that more because I had a pen in my hand.
Still has to use the pen to sign it.
That's right.
Here's electronic signature. So I'm the paperless board member.
Okay,
so
I'm going to do it all with it online. Okay. Okay. So
Yes, we have just one application, but DFA, you know, it'll be good for SRF, for Prop 1, Prop 84, at all. One application.
Excellent.
State board.
I can't wait
It's
to apply
happening
for
now.
some trash grants.
Thank you, DFA.
So in Marin, Rob talked about this. We conducted preliminary assessments of priority land use areas, and again, ditto to what Rob Carson said and Jeff Brasseau, we would like the density, the definition of high density residential to be changed at least to 15 units per acre for the reasons stated by Rob Carson. Also, because of our initial assessment of trash generation rates in high-density residential areas, we found that those in several areas trash generation rates are low, and therefore we strongly support Track 2 as a compliance option, and we support and we recommend the adoption of the new proposed language included in change sheet number 1 distributed on April 4th. This language will allow us to determine the areas within our jurisdictions where full capture system equivalency will address trash problems where they exist. And then I wanted to say I really like the language provided in change sheet number 1, those words, but are not limited to. I like that. That really gave me, in my mind, the flexibility that I think I'll need to implement, help all the municipalities in Marin implement Track 2 if they so choose to do so. I wanted to say that I supported the comments on keeping language in there to support regulatory source control. So thanks for your time.
Thank you.
And can I just quickly thank, especially the last 2 speakers, but others, who acknowledge the change sheets that were made, and staff's tremendous effort to respond to the concerns and the confusions that we've heard, and not try to use that change sheet as a request for more additional time in order to fully understand those change sheets. So I appreciate that that you appreciate staff's effort in providing that clarification.
My name is Kurt Kruger. I'm with Contech Engineered Solutions. I'd like to read some comments offered by Vaco Allen. He's our regulatory manager. He suffered an accident and is not able to be here. I'd also like to add some comments of my own, so I'm requesting 4 minutes. Vaco started by saying he would have liked to have been here to ask if the latest change made to the definition of full capture systems be rejected, and that the definition proposed in the first draft amendments be retained instead. In the draft final, the definition was modified to state that full capture systems, including those listed in Appendix 1 of the Bay Area-wide Trash Capture Demonstration Project report, be included. This is a mistake. The issue with Appendix 1 is that it includes 41 different devices that were approved simply on the basis that they contained a screen with perforations finer than 5 millimeters and had certain calculated hydraulic capacity. No testing of any kind or any demonstration of operational feasibility was required for approval. Almost all devices that were submitted were included in the appendix. Some experimental designs that have never been built, some of those no longer exist. And the list also includes some older devices that were redesigned to include a 5 millimeter screen, but that were not renamed to differentiate them from standard screenless models. This has led to confusion with some incorrectly assuming that any device with the name listed in the appendix is approved. The Los Angeles Water Board's certification process was much more robust. Thank you, John Bishop, for that, in that it required some in-field demonstration of feasibility and trash capture performance. We do support grandfathering devices installed under the San Francisco program, but we don't support blanket acceptance of the entire list of devices in Appendix 1 for use in these amendments. The apparent decision to base full capture system certification solely on the presence of a screen ignores the operational issues that we've seen at times in both the Los Angeles and San Francisco areas. For example, direct screening systems designed with flow paths perpendicular to the screen face tend to act like strainers and rapidly clog with organic debris and trash. This can cause bypass at a fraction of the required flow rate, even though only a small fraction of their rated storage capacity is consumed. Another poor design feature is a system that routes peak flows through the trash storage area, because they are observed to churn and resuspend previously captured trash, which at high flows then washes out. Since maintenance is typically triggered by consumption of storage capacity, these systems may go unmaintained even while trash is being flushed downstream. The efficacy of these amendments hinges on whether or not the full capture devices actually work. So the process for reviewing and approving them should be robust, especially considering that operational status will be self-reported and that there are no BMP effectiveness or receiving water monitoring requirements in the amendments. We urge you to reject the newly added text and move forward with the original full capture system definition.
Can you answer that question? Did you all go with that just more in the sense of you already have the Bay Area program up and running and
That's
going
correct.
as opposed to an independent assessment? It's a question of you would have to dive in
So
to accept this and that and that.
that's correct.
Okay,
I mean,
that's what I thought. It's not that you might not, if you were looking at all the pieces, be mindful of these points.
that's correct. As you mentioned, when I have done the certifications before and will be likely doing them again, I will look at the efficacy of the program.
Thank you. Speaking for myself,
You've got 44 seconds.
I'll talk fast. I've personally worked with most cities in the Bay Area on the trash capture programs and have personally helped design and install dozens of large-scale full capture trash units, representing over a third of all the protected areas around the Bay. The equipment list created by the San Francisco board was never intended for certification purposes. Now that's not me speaking, that's Tom Mumley, the Assistant Executive Officer of the San Francisco board. Tom's here today, so please ask him about it. The concerns Vaco and I have are real. The city of Richmond installed one of these units and it failed, flooded a street, washed out a stream bank. Please don't base the entirety of these amendments on untested products. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We now have one person coming up to represent two organizations, so she should have 6 minutes. No, just go on.
Just keep moving. Okay.
Yep.
All right.
Sorry.
No, it's all good. Okay. Good afternoon, Madam Chair and board members. My name is Karen Ashby. I'm here today representing the County of Orange on behalf of the Orange County Stormwater Program. I am with Larry Walker Associates. The Orange County Stormwater Program is comprised of the County of Orange, the Orange County Flood Control District, and all 34 Orange County cities, and have actively participated in the public review process for the development of the proposed trash amendments through the review and comments on the June 2014 June 2014 and December 2014 versions of the draft amendments. We are very concerned about the proposed trash amendments, specifically the confusion in how Track 2 is implemented, although some of that may have been clarified today, and I appreciate that. How it is complied with, specifically the units and threshold for high-density residential, and how equivalency is determined and demonstrated. And again, I understand there's some clarifications today. One of our principal concerns is that the proposed trash amendments present a one-size-fits-the-entire-state approach. It fundamentally assumes that trash is a high-priority problem in every water body throughout the state of California, and that urban land uses can be typecasted based solely upon research conducted in San Francisco and LA areas. Although the absence of an identified impairment does not mean that a water body is not impaired, conversely, it also does not mean that it is impaired and that the implementation of control measures is warranted. Verification of a problem and its principal causes is a critical step in the development of a regulatory framework that should not ordinarily be overlooked. If we are going to largely forego this step, we need to be absolutely certain that our assumptions are not going to result in a misdirection of resources. We want you to consider the impact of the proposed trash amendments on the planned community cities of Central and South Orange County. The city of Irvine, for example, has determined through GIS analysis that 71% of the city's developed area would be considered priority land use areas under the proposed trash amendments, thereby requiring the retrofitting of more than 4,500 drain inlets under Track 1. The number of drain inlets by land use includes 3,270 residential, which are 70% of that total amount. The reason why this is a large area is because of the 10 units per acre residential criterion for the priority land use. Let me see, I'm going to move on here. I do have some additional photographs that we provided to Johanna on Friday. I have some additional ones that supplement the 10 dwelling unit per acre value. If those are helpful, I have them here today. The point that we want to make is that in order to address our concern regarding the high-density residential, is that we're requesting that you evaluate the need to modify that from 10 dwelling units per acre to 15 dwelling units per acre, or perhaps even look at another threshold such as number of dwelling units per building. I want to identify that modification is not addressed in the change sheet, and I do it because it goes to the actual default of high-density residential. And I don't think it's a matter of, in my opinion, making it look more attractive. It's a matter of making it more correct. Is high-density residential really 10, or is it 15 or some other value? And so to me, that's one of the fundamental questions that we have. We also want to recognize the changes that were made on the change sheet regarding the flexibility and alternate uses, and thank you for those changes. Okay, I'm going to switch hats real quick. Okay, I'm also here today representing another entity, the Riverside County Flood Control and Water Conservation District. They're comprised of the County of Riverside, their stormwater program, the County of Riverside, and 29 Riverside cities, and are regulated by 3 separate regional boards. We also concur with the comments and testimony submitted by CASCA, the County of San Diego, County of Orange, and Marion Ashley, the chairman of the Riverside County Board of Supervisors. Riverside County permittees are very concerned about the proposed trash amendments and the resulting impact on the municipal stormwater program. They support the request by the Signature Coalition to delay the amendments to address the key issues that have been brought up today. They're very concerned about the proposed trash amendments, that they mandate statewide prioritization of trash as a high priority pollutant of concern without first determining whether trash has been identified as an impairment to a surface water. The trash amendments do assume, similar to what I just said, that trash is a high priority in every water body without a corresponding assessment to verify that this is a case. It appears that this amendment does skip this important step that I previously mentioned, the County of Orange comments. That's a critical step in the regulatory framework to actually assess impairment and then determine that controls are warranted and in fact to then implement them. Thus, this mandate may in fact redirect resources from the highest priority pollutants of concern that have already been identified for a region. While we agree with board staff that trash is a controllable priority pollutant where an impairment exists, it is critical and good public policy to ensure that a particular water body is impaired and that we have significant sources of trash identified before implementing controls. We are concerned that the trash amendments will conflict with the current watershed planning efforts that are already underway throughout the state, an important feature within some of the recently adopted municipal permits in both LA and San Diego regions, and soon to be in other permits. There's an emphasis on watershed planning initiatives and the use of a watershed focus to address the highest priority pollutants of concern, which now are mandated to include trash, irregardless of potentially an assessment not being conducted in the receiving waters. Our recommendation is to add language to the trash amendments to allow the regional boards and permittees to work together on prioritizing water quality concerns, including trash. If trash is a high priority amongst all the other pollutants of concern that we are dealing with, and there are many, then an alternate schedule may be necessary within the context of an approved watershed or implementation plan to address these concerns and these priorities. And I thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Chairman Marcus and the board. My name is Barthon. I'm Deputy Director for Municipal Utility Department with the City of Stockton. We manage the stormwater program for the city. I know you board make a decision on policy, but let me give you a feel for what we're going through from a mid-sized city. City of Stockton is around 350,000 people. As you all know, City of Stockton just exit a bankruptcy 2 months ago. So basically we broke, and we also a disadvantaged community. The incomes in our communities is below standard of the U.S. government. In order to pass a rate increase for stormwater program, we need to pass the public approved Proposition 218. That's the only way we can raise the money to do anything with stormwater program. In 2010, about 5 years ago, we went through a process of go out for public rate increase for stormwater usage fee, and the publics reject the idea. So right now, what we got is $2.10 per family per month. This equates to about less than $6 million a year in the revenues for the stormwater program. Our expenditure for stormwater program is over $6 million a year. So very painful for me at the end of fiscal year to sit out, okay, this project needs to be moved to next fiscal year. City of Stockton is phase 1 MS4 program. So according to staff report, it will cost somewhere between $4 to $10.67 per capita. This equates to about $1.5 to $3.5 million more per year in the program we need to get. Stockton, with a lot of social issue, rental, like Jonathan said, people don't maintain their properties, low income, and big thing is the homeless. The city support the idea of clean ocean, clean waterway, clean delta, because everything else you go to delta, we support that. However, we urging the board to delay the adoption of trash amendment right now until further financial support can be more identified for a city like us. Stockton can able to get more funding to implement the trash policy in the future. And thank you for your consideration.
And we really should ask our Division of Financial Assistance to work with you, because there is money now. The last 9 speakers are Chris Kraft, Brendan Ferry, Cheryl Hun. I thought Cheryl left. Kyle Jones, Craig Johns, Sue Vang, Erica Arriaga, Tim Shestek, and Cliff Moriyama. Go ahead.
Thank you. Chris Kraft, engineering manager with oversight of stormwater program for the city of Roseville. Certainly addressing stormwater and discards in our surface waters, bays and estuaries and oceans is very important. It's long overdue, and I applaud your effort for sure. On a personal note, from someone who actually recreates in all those waters, I think it's awesome. Earlier we saw some pretty compelling pictures of probably some of the grossest pollution, trash pollution that we can even imagine. I don't have any pictures, but I want to paint the picture. I want you to paint, the picture I want to paint is 40 people going into the open spaces within Roseville on a creek restoration project. We have an Adopt a Creek program, very effective. Flanked on both sides of this open space were some of these high priority land uses. 40 people, one full day, they picked up one bag of trash. Point is that perception is everything. And in my community, there's not a big perception that there's a trash problem. And so I want to applaud some of the clarifications that Jonathan offered today to provide us a visual assessment. We feel that visual assessment will be able to help us determine where our priority land uses are and how we can effectively address those. So there was a lot said. It's nearly 5 o'clock. Again, thank you very much.
Thank you.
So I would assume that area where the 40 people picked up one bag of trash a day would not be identified by you as your high priority area.
I would hope not, correct. Oh, one last thing if I could, and we do support adding the threshold for density units from 10 to 15. Our high density starts at 14, but we generally don't see high density being built under 18. We have single family homes up to about that 14. And so we would support a 15 density unit as well. Thank you.
Since we've heard that mentioned several times, if I could ask for the vice chair's indulgence at the end of the 9 or so speakers that remaining to ask, especially to Sean and others who spoke earlier in the day, if they had any thoughts with respect to the 10 versus 15.
Good afternoon, board members. My name is Brendan Ferry. I'm a stormwater program manager with El Dorado County. El Dorado County is a Phase 1 permittee in the Lake Tahoe Basin. We're also a Phase 2 permittee on the west slope. We also have coverage under the industrial permit for some of our sites, and we do maintain and manage construction site general permit coverage as well. So we see these rules as affecting us in many areas. I just want to touch on a few of those today. We do certainly share this board's concern with maintaining and preserving the beneficial uses of waterways in the state. We take our compliance very seriously and maintain great relationships with our regional water board representatives. However, we do have some concerns about a statewide blanket approach to trash, which we see as greatly and unduly affecting local government. We don't doubt that trash is a serious issue in the state, but we do have concerns with the blanket-wide, statewide approach saying that trash is a problem in every waterway, including Lake Tahoe. We are generally a rural county. We don't feel we have significant trash problems. And in the Lake Tahoe Basin, we're actually focusing on a fine sediment TMDL. It's the only one in the world. We spend a significant amount of resources complying with the Lake Clarity Crediting Program. There's been a lot of administrative and management hurdles that have been put on us there. And by the way, we do use visual assessments for all our compliance in Lake Tahoe. So it's a great way for monitoring at an effective and manageable level for local government. So we certainly are encouraged to see that as an option for us. On the west slope, the Phase 2 permit has incredibly increased our permit requirements from the previous permit, and we are seeing a substantial resource need now to comply with our permits. As Marin County stated earlier, using the math provided in the staff report with the trash amendments, we're estimating an additional $1.3 million per year for the county for compliance. In order to meet that need, since we are funded, our program's funded primarily through general fund and our road fund, and due to the restrictions on Prop 218 requirements and voter-initiated local funding taxes, which are generally unsupported, we have tested some of that and we continue to look at that as an option. There's no doubt that in order to comply with these requirements, we will need to divert resources from other priority areas. And so that's a big concern for us. We've taken a lot of time to decide and determine and do a lot of modeling on what our priorities are. And now it feels like it's being dictated that trash will be, no matter what, one of our #1 priorities. And so resources will be diverted. We're concerned about that. We're also concerned about the topography, snow and ice in our county. Flooding due to some of these institutional controls is a huge concern for us. I have 4 seconds left. So with that, we support the Signature Coalition's letter. We did sign on to that. We encourage delaying adoption today to further the dialogue, to come to further consensus on language. And if not, we do appreciate some of the changes in the, I better mention that, in the change sheet, allowing us to decide what the priority areas are and allowing for greater monitoring flexibility. I'm not printing that, but thank you very much for your time.
Cheryl.
Hello, Cheryl Hune with the City of Sacramento. I know you've heard from me already once today, so I'll try to be brief and not be redundant with many of the comments that we agree with that have been covered today. We would like to say that we support the Signature Coalition's recommendations and CASCWA's recommendations. I wanted to touch on one of the items that was talked about early on in the day about the list of certified full capture systems listed in the policy. One of the requests that we had put in our written comments was to include some of the treatment control measures that stormwater programs have been using for the last 10 or 15 years. For example, I just wanted to give an example of the City of Sacramento, and our Sacramento Stormwater Quality Partnership has developed a set of new development criteria that new development and redevelopment projects have to meet. These criteria, this criteria requires treatment requirements, as well as we have new quantitative LID standards and hydromodification standards that we've developed. Most or all of the full capture BMPs that are listed currently in the policy are focused at gross solids, and they would not meet any of these requirements. However, the most commonly used BMPs to meet our new development requirements are bioretention systems, so they are the green streets, the rain gardens, and water quality detention basins with controlled outlets. These devices would meet all of our requirements, and they would meet the trash amendments. And so since you've heard from many of the phase 1s and phase 2s, we have resources, we're trying to focus our efforts. It would be really helpful that we wouldn't have to have hundreds of submittals to the state board approving these types of devices. I think CASCWA's new development BMP handbook has treatment control measures listed in there that have a series of measures that are listed as high efficient for trash removal. I would request that those be included on the certified full capture devices so that agencies could eliminate those from the areas they have to focus on and then evaluate the rest of their city to determine where trash programs are and focus on those. Like Board Member Moore had brought up, I think that there's a concern that it's gonna have folks put in these screening devices instead of LID measures and bioretention and some of the things that get after our chemical pollutants that we are seeing as problems in our waterways and causing us just to focus on visible pollutants. Thank you for your time.
Yeah, thank you. John, do you have any thoughts on certification process? And
So we're very supportive of using multi-benefit or capture, infiltrate, reuse type projects, and we're committed to getting them certified as soon as people propose them and work through it. I'm not comfortable without having spent the time with CASCWA to go through those to do it off the cuff. But I would commit to working on it, and if the board is concerned about that issue, I think we could propose some resolution language that would address it in a pretty quick time frame.
John, I wanted to add one other thing, which is they talked about hundreds of submittals, and I can understand why they'd be concerned about that. But the way our amendment is written, these would need to be certified once. So we're not talking about hundreds of submittals. We're talking about 6 submittals.
I had asked about this in my staff briefing, and staff does have some language that they put together, and I made copies of it, so I'll just go ahead and pass this along.
well, this gets to, I appreciate you noting that, I saw that, if we can make a mistake of pulling municipalities in different directions policy-wise, and this is an attempt to try to reconcile that. But I share the concern about the process of approval, and what Mr. Hahn was just saying is that, that I think working with CASQA, and the leadership here in this room, it's possible to come up with a certification process that's manageable, and that doesn't take away the incentive to do LID, multi-benefit, disconnection of impervious surface type engineering. Does that sound good?
And just so I can avoid touching paper, I will also weigh in and say that, yes, I would very much appreciate, towards the end of this, staff proposing your language with respect to a resolution language with respect to the certification process, and that it should include some kind of engagement of not only CASCA, but also our NGO friends as well.
Yes, very much. And in the end, I really see this as our customer service at the water boards, both state and regional boards, is working in partnership. And I'll have more comments on the watershed plan after we've heard from more people.
Kyle. Kyle Jones. Okay, and then why don't you just go ahead and comment about the density issue?
Oh, okay. Okay. Well, let me get his card. Get this right. Good evening. I'm speaking on behalf of Kyle Jones. He's the policy advocate for the Sierra Club. He didn't provide me any talking points. It just said that he agreed with what I said. So there you go.
Okay,
Everything
so
I said earlier.
Move on to density.
The density thing. So we had commented in our August comment letter that there are studies that show from the Bologna Creek TMDL that low density areas produce just as much trash, sometimes even more than some of the higher density areas in LA.